we are talking to Marie Myung-Ok Lee, and I'm going to really do my best to not flub her name during this interview. It's so beautiful. I love it.
Hmm.
Marie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. So I always start off with a little icebreaker. I was at a podcast convention this weekend, and they gave us these little interview cards. I don't know if you
Ooh.
can see them. So I've divided them into 3 piles. You're going to pick a number between 1 and 3. I'm going to pop one off the top, and that'll be your question to start
Oh.
off with.
All right. It's like tarot. I'll take 3.
Yes. Take 3. Okay. It says, "What was the worst time you ever put your foot in your mouth, and what did you say?"
Oh, I was positive my friend was pregnant.
Oh,
She was
no.
not.
Whoops.
I said sorry.
You did.
I was
done
so
that.
positive. I was like, this time I'm positive. And she was trying to get pregnant and everything. So
So, and she had a little belly going on?
yeah, and I think it would have been remiss for me not to say something in that situation. So I
Right.
was trying to be
I'm
nice.
sure
And
she thought twice about it.
yes.
I'm
Yeah.
down the
She
road.
was very generous about it.
Well, that's a tricky one though, when you know that someone's trying,
Right.
and then like, oh, maybe here's a little extra that wasn't there last time. Are you pregnant? I can totally see that. But thank you for recalling that so quickly. That was great. I would have
Ouch.
been like, let me see. So thank you for that.
Oh, I have a
And
long list, so that was the top
yeah.
one.
I am Laura Cathcart Robbins. This is the Only One in the Room podcast, but I'm never the only one in this room because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, honey. So, like I said, we're talking to Marie Myung-Ok Lee. She is an acclaimed Korean American writer and author of the new Simon and Schuster novel, The Evening Hero. I have the galley here. Marie has made a note to send me the blingy cover. She's holding it up there.
Bling, bling.
It is very, very lovely and sparkly. The book is amazing, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to ask you, Marie, how do you identify?
She, her.
She, her.
And I have 2 first names legally. My name is Marie, and Myung-Ok actually means brilliant crystal in
Ah,
Korean, and that's the underlying Chinese characters. And I've been a rock hound all my life, so it's very fitting.
nice. I love that. I love that. That it's really magical then. I knew
I
it
didn't,
was.
yes, and I didn't
Yeah.
know what my name meant for the longest time because my parents, we were living in northern Minnesota. They want to be super not Korean and so forth. And so I just would go to all these rock shows with my dad.
Yeah. And that's where your book takes place, right?
Yes, in northern
Yes, in
Minnesota.
northern Minnesota. So like I said, I'm reading your book. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I want to talk to you about it. I know it started off as like 850 pages, right, which is a tome. And I want to talk about your immersive research. I was telling Scott how you helped deliver a baby and all that. But first, like we discussed, I want to talk about your son, because as soon as we talked about that and you and I really connected around this, I felt like it was a true only one in the room story. So let's start off by when your son was diagnosed with autism.
Sure. So, slightly before that, he had a spinal cord cancer when he was only 18 months old, for which he was hospitalized several times. And then he just went through all these horrible surgeries, and then so he went from this happy baby to crying all the time
Mm,
from 18 months to like 2 years old. And and then he was slowly starting to lose his words, but he was also like in a body cast, so a lot of it we couldn't figure out what was
yeah.
what. So he got out of the body cast, and then when he was 3 years old, he had a bunch of words and he used to talk, and then suddenly he just stopped talking. I still remember his last word was apple. He just kind of
Mm,
like would lose all these words, and then he was also getting really, for a toddler, he was getting super violent. Like if he'd sit in our car, like in our bike seat, he'd try to pinch us, and he was just and he started, and then we thought he might have a hearing problem because he seemed to not understand his name when we'd call him. He started doing all these weird, dangerous things. So we had to bring him in to the Child Development Center in Providence where we were living. And they just kind of dumped this on you. They just said, oh, your kid has autism. They don't outgrow it. Here, take this piece of paper. Oh, and you might need SSRIs because we understand like not only is it the mom's fault, sort of this residue of Bettelheim's refrigerator mother, but it's really, it was like, sorry, buddy. And then we were just kind of, we were just very bereft. And then,
Wait,
yeah,
you might need SSRIs, mean like antidepressants?
yeah, because actually this
Yeah.
didn't happen to me, but this happened to a friend of mine because they said, they said something about you might want to kill yourself. They actually
Oh.
said something about, oh, like a lot of moms get depressed about this and so forth. And I tend to be, okay, like, what do we do about this? And it almost immediately started getting really bad. When he was in the hospital, he had a ton of diarrheas. Like, it looked
Mm.
like he had something wrong with his stomach, but then, the cancer was so dire, they're just kind of like, lady, like, don't even, whatever. So he was still having these really bad diarrheas, but he was also starting to bang his head. And they were calling this
Mm.
self-injurious behaviors. And we lived in this really old house in Providence. And we had like a cast iron bathtub. He would run to the bathtub and like bang his head on it.
Mm.
It was awful. And he was biting us. But so that was the first time when some behavioral specialists suggested we might want to put him in an institution, for which they'll give him a helmet, they can give him all these drugs. He's probably dangerous to himself, to us, blah, blah, blah. But even though I was a first time mom and not a very confident one, I just felt like, I just feel like there's something else going on with him, because it didn't seem like there was a reason for why, you know, it's not a behavior. It didn't seem autistic to me. And then finally, at Mass General Hospital, I found
Okay,
this
wait, wait,
doctor.
wait. Sorry. I'm just gonna stop you for a
Yes,
second. So he had what was the cancer that he had at
he
18
had
months?
something called a paraspinal schwannoma tumor. So it was a
Mhm.
tumor that grows inside the spinal cord, and
Wow.
it destroyed a bunch of his spine. So he actually had to get a spinal fusion. He had to have two resection surgeries. At that time we had to choose, we're going to do radiation. It turned out that it had metastasized. So we were able to, at least that part was okay. But so when we found this doctor at Mass General, his name is Dr. Tim Bowie, someone who was
Mhm.
actually credulous enough to think, oh, well, he's having all these diarrheas. Like, could this be related to why he's in such distress? So Dr. Bowie did an endoscopy, and it turned out Jason had this thing called eosinophilic gastroenteritis. It's an autoimmune condition. It's like ulcerative colitis, for which he was
Mm.
prescribed incredibly strong ulcerative colitis, like anti-inflammatory medication, which worked pretty well. So he was able to, we had him in a school for kids with autism.
Right. Wait, how old was he at this point
So
when he
he's
was
like 3, 4, 5 when he's going through these schools, and
Okay,
then
and you're
he's
on the East Coast, you're Providence, Rhode Island at that
yes,
point? Okay.
we're
And then
we're
so the trip to Mass General is a fabulous hospital normally.
yes.
So that was worth
Oh
the trip
yes,
over there. Yeah.
definitely, and big shout outs like to the Ronald McDonald House,
Yeah. Oh, I love the Ronald
right,
McDonald House. Let us give them a shout out.
right.
One of my favorite organizations.
I
Yeah.
mean, it was just such a comfort that we had a place to stay and people could come help us, and so he's doing better, but he's clearly autistic in that he's not really speaking. So they're he's at a school where they do something called applied behavior analysis, where they kind of teach them, they give them treats to teach them how to smile or do whatever.
Mm.
But that's kind of the gold
Incentivize
standard.
them. Yeah.
Yes. But
Yeah.
because we have him on a special diet, we're not letting him eat the Skittles and the Cheetos that they use and so forth. So his gut is getting better, but then it seemed to me like he was starting when he was about like 8 or 9, all
Mhm.
these really violent behaviors started coming back, and now he's bigger. And when I read the insert on the drugs that he's taking, it said that occasionally it can have these refractory like side effects that cause the same symptoms. Like, he's getting stomach cramps from this drug that's not helping him anymore. And as they are wearing off and he's having this tolerance, he's becoming just he was eating his clothes. He was literally eating a shirt a day, like eating it. It's called pica
Wow.
when they eat
Let
non-food. He would come back with a bare chested, and
Because he
people
had eaten his entire shirt.
he would like, yes, he would tear it up like his bus ride was like 45 minutes. He would literally ingest it, and then of course there'd be digestive problems with that as well.
Wow. Wow.
And
Yeah.
so we don't know we can do. He's extremely violent. He actually, because it's ABA, they take a ton of data. So he's having like 300 aggressions a day. The school is saying you need to put him on some kind of drugs or we can't do anything for him.
Okay,
And then,
so wait, I have more questions. So
yeah.
between ages 3 and now, you said he's like 8 and 9 at this point
Mhm.
in the story. Um, so he had the cancer, which put him into a body cast. At that some point in there, he became more nonverbal, right?
Yes.
And so there, you knew that there was something else going on, but then there's also the violence,
Yes.
and this your mother's intuition is telling your spidey sense there's something behind this. This isn't just autism, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
yeah,
Even
no,
though I don't know anything about autism, I'm
right,
not the expert, and he does
yeah,
seem to have the other symptoms. He does repetitive behaviors, which are called self-stimulating behaviors. Like
ah,
he'll jump up and down, toe walk, he'll do these things with his fingers.
mm-hmm.
Um, and we're not even sure at this point if he's learning things because he's just having so many meltdowns every day.
And
So,
but
yes.
what about his peers? Is he different than his peers that are in this school with him? Is he having more outbursts and more aggressions?
Well, what's interesting is a teacher whom I will not name was
Mm-hmm.
also saying, I get that you don't want to put your son on drugs, but every other kid in the school is on drugs. And she
Ah,
said, the reason you can tell is because they gain tons of weight. And at the
mm,
same time, because I was at Brown at the time, I could easily go to the medical school library and look at the one study that they've done on this drug. And, I majored in economics. I do a lot with data. I could easily see small sample size, very short term, what's called the p value, how statistically significant was pretty low. Yet,
mm.
because of the one study, all the doctors were prescribing this antipsychotic to the children. And then I'm also feeling like, wait, what if it's essentially the way the drug works, its mechanism of action, it's a sedative. So I was kind of like, why why would I want to be doing this? And even
Right.
when I ask these experts, they would admit that it is a sedative, and what we would have to do, and that it would probably wear off, just like with the ulcerative colitis drugs. We would have to try to educate him as quickly as possible until it wore off. And I just thought, this just doesn't seem great. And that's
Yeah.
actually when I started like looking around, because I didn't even know it at the time, but the drug later would turn out to have permanent side effects because the children grew so quickly. They would get diabetes.
Mm.
Boys would start lactating. Later, the
Wow.
company lost $1 billion lawsuit over improper marketing of the drug to autistic children.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Right.
So, but at the same time, like we were really stuck because the school was just saying, all they did was give us a list of psychiatrists and say, here. But then I thought, well, psychiatrists are also supposed to counsel, like our son is like not communicative. So it was
Right.
clearly they want us to put him on drugs. I didn't feel comfortable with it. I didn't feel like it was effective. It looked like it didn't look safe to me. So I'm just kind of thrashing around trying to figure out what to do. And then the reason cannabis came up,
Yeah. Tell
oddly,
me. Yeah.
besides the fact that it's, I did cannabis in high school, although the stuff we get at Northern Minnesota, I'm realizing isn't really cannabis. It's just like that shake at the bottom. And I was
Right.
never that into it. But then when I'm researching substances that cannot hurt, it cannot literally kill you,
Mm-hmm.
cannabis is actually at the top of the list. And then I happened to be reading Michael Pollan's The Botany of Desire. And the funny thing is, I actually have like a cocktail napkin stuck in the page, and it's labeled 2008 because I have a student paper in it. And he has one paragraph where he says that cannabis slows down short-term memory formation, which is why for cannabis users, you'll stare at a flower and go, oh, wow, like
Right.
short-term
Right.
memory. But then for our son, I was thinking like he gets so agitated by stuff, and it seems like there's too much input coming in. Like one thing that the school is saying, oh, there's no way he'll learn how to ride a bike because he can't deal with like all the executive functioning. And so I tried to teach him how to ride a bike, but he would clearly want to. But then when we put him on the bike, he would start crying and like hitting us, and they'd throw the bike. And so I
Mm.
thought, well, it's possible that maybe this could help him with the inputs. And then I also found more things in the NIH that cannabis is anti-tumoral. I'm not
Oh.
saying it's anti-cancer, but they say
Right.
in vitro it kills tumor cells. And then just wonderfully, how sometimes these things in the universe just kind of coalesce. Because so while I'm doing this and
Mm-hmm.
asking some of his integrative doctors what they think of this idea, they are all 100% going, no, that's damaging. How could you even think of that? What's it going to do to
Right.
his brain? And, making me feel
Yes.
terrible. But then at the same time, Because the Brown students, as some project, like I think it was like Students for Sane Drug Policy, they worked on getting the medical marijuana laws changed so that medical
Mhm.
marijuana was legal in Rhode Island. And one day I'm walking home from work, and there was actually a patient like advocacy group going on campus. They were just like renting the room. So I kind of sometimes with the universe, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to go like, this is stupid. I shouldn't do this.
Right.
I just thought like, how can I ignore this? So I go to the meeting, and it's the most like broke down bunch of people you can imagine. And it's not a bunch of hippies. It's just, it's like these veterans who have back pain, just
Mm.
all these people you wouldn't consider to be cannabis users. And they're just talking about how much it's helped them. And then there's one guy there who had Tourette's. So I made a beeline over to him, and I said, What's it like? What's it like? You have a neurological disorder. I explained, I was thinking about it for my son. And he did say that it helps him, it gives him like another second before he has an outburst. And that helped him a
Mm.
lot.
It gives them,
So
like, a moment of pause.
yes, he
Yeah.
said, and it was quite significant. And so, bless their hearts, the people who headed the patient advocacy coalition, when I said, "Hey, my kid's 9," I'm kind of thinking of this, they were
Mhm.
completely credulous and wanted to help me. And there was another doctor, Dr. Louis Grinspoon at Harvard Medical School, who's a big advocate of marijuana as medicine. And he actually started out as anti-cannabis, but while he was doing his research, he's a psychiatrist. He realized so much of it is propaganda, and so he's become sort of an advocate. But then I'm also still stuck because when I'm asking him, the doctor, like, how much should I give him? How do I start? He's just like, I don't
Mm.
know. Like, no one's done this before. Your kid's only 9. They do know that cannabis with children probably changes their brain. However, as my colleague at Columbia, Carl Hart, points out, they've never suggested that it does something bad. It does probably change their brain, but we're
But
not
yeah.
sure. You know what I'm saying? Like the propaganda is
Yeah.
like, oh my God, the frying egg, it's going to change your brain.
Yeah.
So we're so like in extremis at this point that we went ahead. Jason's neurologist, who's also, he's kind of like my age, so he also went to Brown, so he's kind of somewhat of a peer. He
Mhm.
was he was like not happy about my idea, but I had to show him all the NIH data about it being anti-tumoral. He made us do a round of Marinol, which is a synthetic, which did very weird things to Jason. But he did in the end
It's
sign
synthetic
off. It's
cannabis?
oh yes, it's a synthetic cannabis, but interestingly, it can kill you. It's you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
wow.
It's a
Yeah.
synthetic drug that if you overdose, it can kill you.
Mm.
But so he signed off on it. And then the weird thing is, this was 2008 when cannabis is still very new as a medicine. No one was using it with children. There were no dispensaries in Rhode Island. Like the law had just changed. And I also have this idea because of Jason's cancer, it had to be organic. Like I couldn't buy it off the
Mhm.
street. And I have a certain ideas about intention as well. I just felt
Yeah.
like it had to be someone who was going to grow it for him with intention. And then oddly enough, this guy, they said, we found the perfect person for you. His name is Steven. He was a student at the agricultural college. He's kind of devoting his life to this. So he kind of did this as a project. He had a lot of patients, patients as in cannabis patients.
Mhm.
And so he just started coming over and he would bring us different strains. We were trying different things. He brought us Volcano like vaporizer, which Jason couldn't figure out how to use. So we're trying to figure out other ways to get it in him. Um,
How did you get it in him?
well, because he couldn't do the vaporizer, which is usually the way that you can titrate it, and
Mhm.
it's effective the fastest. We tried a bunch of different like carriers. We tried glycerin first, and that didn't seem very effective. But then we decided,
Like drops under the tongue or something?
yeah. But what we
Yeah.
would do is he would bring us a bunch of like the flour. We'd have to decarboxylate it and then put it in the glycerin and like shake it up every day.
Yeah.
But then we decided that didn't seem to work. And then we thought a lipid might be better in terms of also extracting the other constituents of the plant, like the terpenes. So he made an
Mhm.
olive oil. And then Jason is also allergic to dairy, to casein, the protein in milk. And he also made like a ghee, which doesn't have casein. And so we started making these cookies for him.
Mhm.
And then over the year, it's a good thing I'm really into data. When Jason was on Dr. Gupta's show, I could show I have like 20 notebooks of, just looking at what happened. So we had red eyes, couch lock, extra aggression, anxiety. If you For probably about 9 months, it looked like it didn't work. We were trying different strains, and then we also felt like, oh, well, he would probably like. well, let's use an indica. Like that'll just bring him down. But it's much more complicated than that. Like just
Mm.
avoiding sativas or whatever. Like, so at the very end, Steven is like, I don't think this is working, but I have one more strain. And he said, I use it with my Huntington's patients and with my cancer patients, and it's super strong.
Mm.
And up to this point, too, what I had been doing is what with almost everything I do with Jay is I try it first, and then give it to him.
Mhm.
And I took the tiniest bit of this White Russian strain, and I just fell asleep for 2 hours. I'm telling you, like microscopic, like putting it on a knife and like licking it off. And I just thought,
Wow.
oh my god, this is crazy. But when we tried it with Jason, it was the weirdest thing. It was just like he just like leveled off. Like all of a
You could
sudden,
see it?
yes, all his agitation, and he wasn't high. Like the other time, like I'll admit it, he got high, like
Mhm.
laughing, like red eyes. He just seemed like he'd leveled off, and it lasted, maybe like an hour or two, and he did. It didn't like work right. Do you know what I'm saying? But it worked
Yeah.
well enough that we're like, oh, we got to do this. And then what was most distinct to us is when Steven had a mite infestation and he ran out, we just saw all the horrible behaviors come back. So what we were realizing is that the cannabis had lifted enough of his pain and anxiety and what other problems he had, just we could see the autism that's underneath, which we didn't see before. So
Oh,
then when it ran
wow.
out, we
Yeah,
just see the
yeah.
violence again. And then we're just like, oh, wait, this is totally separate from that.
So the
And so,
violence was associated with the pain and
yes,
not the
exactly.
autism. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So wait,
Because
I have
also, oh,
no, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, I'm gonna
well,
ask you to stop just for a second because I don't want to get too far away from this and I wanted to see because what I'm hearing is, I mean, amazing.
yes.
You are tracking all of this data around your son, seeing what works and what doesn't. But I'm curious about the emotional component because I hear you're not giving up, you're looking for other ways, but this is your son. Your son's in pain, and he's being violent toward you.
Yes.
I have a couple of people in my life who had have violently autistic sons. They're scared of them.
Yes.
And yeah, and they felt very much like they couldn't participate like other parents were in certain events because they had to be mindful of how their son might impact others.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so just tell me about the emotional journey from the beginning kind of to where you got that, oh my god, this might work. Look, this,
Right.
this right, was it White Russian, the strain?
Yes. White
Yeah,
Russian was the magic strain.
right, right. So tell me about the emotional journey there.
Well, I never wanted to be a mom. Let me put that one out there. I just wanted to be a
Mm,
writer, live in a garret with my cat. So I never babysat. I didn't really understand what having kids was like in general. So I was not a confident mom.
yeah.
And then from 18 months on, like when I couldn't hold him because he was always in a body cast and so forth, and then him hitting me all the time. And then also, you're a mom, like when you can't comfort your child, that's the worst. He's
Yeah.
crying all the time. And if I hug him, he'll bite me. And at one point, like at night, like he would be up all night, like breaking things. And I'm kind of feeling like I'm doing all that I can. Could you like not break things all night? I mean, there's
Mm,
a certain there, I'm human. I run out and when him I'm Korean. Koreans like respect their parents. So being hit in the face all the time did wear on me. And then the worst thing was when my husband was traveling, I would be alone with my son, and my son, even at like 8 or 9, could totally injure me. So I realized I would be screwed if my son injured me because, and I'd want to reason with him, like, if you break my finger, like this is
right.
not going to be good. Or I was giving him some drops once, and he just clamped down on it. He's put his head through windows. So I
Mm,
actually had this exercise ball, this giant exercise ball that if he was crying at night, my husband wasn't home, I would creep into his room with the ball, like I'm pregnant, and he would rush at me and like boing off the ball. Like that's the only way I could deal with him and not hurt him, but at the same
mm,
time save myself because I had
wow.
to go in there if he's crying.
Yeah.
So one of the like weird emotional things that's happened, and that the other thing I was going to tell you is like he went from being like sallow and like really skinny. In fact, his school was almost like making us go to see the doctor and proving we weren't starving him because we weren't giving him the Skittles. So there it was all mixed up like I'm a terrible mother, I don't give him Skittles, I'm starving
Mm,
him. So with the cannabis, suddenly he's like blooming. And then my husband are like, wait, we have not seen him smile since he was
Ah,
3. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
wow.
you don't miss it
Yeah.
because we're too busy, like, trying to get him to boing out these balls and not kill us.
Yeah.
And he's smiling. And we're like, we have not seen this before. And then also, he went from being under the growth chart. Part of it is because his spine is smaller because it's fused and doesn't grow. But now he's like above the growth chart, and our primary care physician is a little bit like, you guys are always doing these weird things. But he literally said, you should just keep doing this. He's so healthy. And
Mm.
today, he's not only so healthy, the thing that I'm so excited to tell you, like, we didn't even talk that long ago, and he was just on Dr. Gupta's show in December, and you can see how low functioning he looks.
Mm.
So for the last 15 years, I've been doing this kind of therapy thing with him, and it tries to bypass. He can speak, but what he says doesn't make sense. Like, if you ask him a yes no question, he'll say yes. If you ask him the same question, he'll say no, or he'll say something completely irrelevant. He'll just echo whatever you say. So I've been doing this thing where he's going to learn how to point to letters. So it bypasses the speech, like the executive functioning you need
Mhm.
for that. And we've been doing this forever, and I've been getting extra training. There's different ways you can do it. So I've been doing every single way that you can do it and kind of doing it on my own. During the pandemic, I was doing it with him every day. I have to be very close to him to hold the board, so he can also easily attack me. Well, and he does seem to
Mhm.
get very upset.
It
But the
agitates him when because it's probably frustrating, right? When he can't
I did,
communicate.
yes. But the funny
Yeah.
thing is, I didn't know because I'm just like, I'm trying to help you, dude. Why are you attacking me? I'm trying to teach you
Yeah.
this. The
Yeah.
homeschooling's not working. So one day we had a really good session with the person who was visiting. And so I'm trying to do this thing with him. And I said, you seem happier. Can you tell me why? He managed to spell out HOPE.
Oh,
Yeah. I told my husband,
oh,
I don't think this is a coincidence.
no.
And it was so the crazy thing I am so happy to tell you is he's made this gigantic breakthrough where he can
Mm.
type. It's very slow. He's still super violent, but he's able to type. I want to type with dad because I'm really afraid of hurting you. And the weird thing,
Wow.
Laura, it seems like he's like almost like neurotypical, but he's stuck in this weird body. Like, he's listened to so much. He has opinions on Ukraine. I asked him what
Mm.
critical race theory was. He knows what that is. He had a great description. No, it's incredible. He wants to go to college. This only happened like the last couple weeks, and
Mm.
actually at his school, they kind of don't believe him. And so we asked him the other thing, like, he's 22. What do you want to do? He actually said, besides go to college, he wanted to go to a bar and have a beer, which he
Oh,
just did 2 days ago.
okay.
Right? So they're still
Yeah.
treating him like he's a kindergartner in school. Here, we're doing number lines.
Right.
But he went to a bar. We asked him how he liked his beer. He said it was bitter, but he liked the taste. The
Mm.
bartender also gave him like a tiny little tequila shot. He thought the tequila shot was gross. But it's like this whole world is open. And so we did ask him. So he's recently started on a new cannabis that this wonderful person who is really spiritual, but also super intellectual and scientific and really into cannabinoids has given us for the last couple months. Since we asked Jason if he thinks that's made a difference, this new
Mm.
cannabis. And he said yes. He said it definitely helps him feel calmer. He does not know why he's suddenly gotten this breakthrough where he's able to communicate now. He can actually communicate fairly fluently.
Wow. And how
But
long has it been since he's been on this strain?
since December,
Since December. So do you think that it was like this was just all locked up inside of him, and now that he's not dealing with the pain and the frustration of that pain, he's able to act. I'm amazed that all that was in him, right? The critical race theory, the knowledge about the Ukraine and what's
right.
going on there. So he's all this information is going into him and he's processing it, but he's just
Yes.
not able to communicate it back.
And the other thing he said was the most helpful that helped him learn how to spell, which I'm still very confused about because he spells correctly. Not, he doesn't spell enough
Right,
ENEUF or
right.
something,
Yeah.
where he just hears it. But I have been for the last probably 5 years reading him neurotypical, age appropriate. Like, I read him Casey Lehman's memoir, Like H is for hawk. I know some of it was like, do I have to read this part?
Yeah.
H is for hawk. We're reading Braiding Sweetgrass right now by Robin Wall Kimmerer. But he
Amazing.
said doing that, and there is like a scene in Dr. Gupta's show where you could have no idea, like he's making noise. He's not looking at me. You have no idea that he is actually listening. But that
Right.
also just makes me realize for every single time we treat someone with a disability like they're not in there, like the default, the Pascal's wager should always be to treat them as if they can hear and understand everything. Because he literally said, I feel like I'm coming out of a coma. Like this is like Oliver's.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that seemed
Yeah.
dramatic, but no,
Yeah.
he is characterizing it as an Oliver Sacks type. Like
Yeah.
now he can talk, and now he might, he can become like a member of society. He'll need supports, but I'm just feeling like I'm erasing all these emails of all these residential places. Like eventually my husband and I get old. We're going to, what I'm saying? Like we've
Mhm.
kept him out of residential placements and institutions 3 times so far. But at the same time, like he's in his 20s and we've had to make these arrangements, but now we're going to have to make them a whole different way. And it's
Yeah.
just very exciting and definitely there are other things he said that we've done something called transcranial magnetic stimulation, which we actually did in LA. We had to, again, because of his behaviors, we had to drive him all the way to LA, which I hope never to do again. But he said that helped him enormously. So now that we know what's
Hmm.
helped him, we can do it more. And he also said that he highly identifies as being Korean, even though he's half Korean,
Mhm.
and he wants to try acupuncture next because he's Korean, and just he has a whole theory of mind, and we know cannabis is neurogenic. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying this is the one thing that happened, but I am finally saying like, wow, this is worth all the people telling me I was crazy and yelling at
Mhm.
me, and if you see Dr. Gupta's program, the precipitousness of it was never over dramatic, because the other family who's in Texas, the dad, even though their child has like unremitting seizures, the dad had almost a felony lodged against him and a child abuse accusation for going public about how much cannabis has helped their child.
Wow.
So,
So tell me about going on Dr. Gupta show because you mentioned it a couple times. Tell me how that happened.
well, when this first happened with Jay when he was 9, I just felt like despite the legal implications, and it would be a felony because it is a class 1 drug according to federal law, I felt like I had to get the word out because it was amazing that we could skip pharmaceuticals and use
Yeah.
something that might not work but wouldn't harm him. So I wrote a series for Slate, and immediately we got so much media attention. Actually, the Brown switchboard broke one day. There's so many people calling, but I could tell first, like legally, I didn't want to get into this, even though Dr. Grinspoon at Harvard had a bunch of buddies who were helping me, would back me up if I needed it.
Mm.
But also, it was very clearly, oh, the professor lady doesn't want to deal with her kid. She's giving him drugs. She's just giving him pot. I
Yeah,
could
she's
just
just
tell.
medicating him. Yeah.
Yes. And I also knew that Dr. Gupta was against medical marijuana at the time as well. So he was
Mm.
one of the people who was like in that big scrum of media people. But over the years, they kept in touch, and they would kind of check in. And I did notice he had a change of heart at some point where he did see a child with seizures really helped. And so now that Jason has turned 21 and then 22, and the laws in New York have changed, he is legally, on a state level, able to use cannabis in
Mhm.
New York. So at
Yeah.
this point, I felt better about getting the word out in a larger platform. And
Yeah.
then I did agree to be on a show.
That's awesome. So they were kind of after you to come on the show, but your views weren't aligned when it first
Yes.
came up. And then you saw that there had been kind of a shift over time, and now it's also legal for Jason
Yes.
in the state of New York at his age to treat it to take this treatment, which does not get him high, but levels him out and allows him to participate in life.
Yes. And
Yeah.
the thing I will add, the reason we know that, if you want, his voice is so interesting, he actually wants to try psychotropic medicines now.
Oh.
So the mother is completely against it, but because he now has agency and is able to communicate, we have taken him to the doctor. We have a prescription. We are going over side effects and so forth, but he has agency, and that's not what
What
I
does
would
he wanna
choose for
try?
him. He wants to try Lexapro,
Lexapro,
an
okay.
SSRI, not an
Yeah.
anxiolytic. and Lexapro is very fast acting. And what's very interesting too is I recently read a piece by Temple Grandin. She talked about how her
Mm.
amygdala, like sort of like the emotional center of her brain, is actually physically larger than most people's. And she said it wasn't until she took an SSRI that she was able to like level out and do her PhD work. But before that, she was too
Interesting.
agitated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
also when I read that, I thought, okay, like you have some scientific grounding for this.
Mhm.
We're doing it in, and yes, he's actually started on it. I said, that's going to be your last beer, dude. We're not, I still
Mixing,
have,
yeah.
yes, we're not mixing any alcohol. He's fine with that. He enjoyed his beer, but
Mm.
he's now going on a different route. And as a parent, that makes me so happy because he's his own person.
Yeah.
And I would never ever want him to use psychotropic drugs. I have never taken them. I
Right.
don't believe in them. But that he's made a reasonable decision in this case.
So I love that he spelled out hope for you that time. What do you see in his future?
He wants to write a book. He
Wow.
wants to write a book. And in fact, last night I said, "Do you know who Solzhenitsyn is?" And he said, "Yes. He's like the Russian dissident writer who was stuck in a gulag." Which I'm going,
Stop
I'm,
it.
I'm
Stop
pretty
it.
sure they don't talk about Solzhenitsyn in his school for
Right.
autistic kids. And so I was telling him, I said, Solzhenitsyn, because Jason's already started writing his memoir a little bit. He wants to be a writer, and it's what's come out so far has been beautiful, about 500 words. And I told him when Solzhenitsyn was in the gulag, he couldn't have a pen and paper, and they would have taken it away. So he chewed little pieces of bread and made like this rosary, like mnemonics, so he could remember. Because the Gulag Archipelago is a really
Mm.
long book, and I
Yeah.
was saying, is this like what you're doing? Because your words that come out are really really eloquent already. And how I write, I usually make a mess and then I fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, yes. He said, I have been working on this book my entire life. And indeed, he wanted to start with that signal moment where he realized he could communicate. And indeed, it was HOPE,
Mm.
HOPE with mom.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so
Mm.
just the convergent memory
Yeah.
was also beautiful. Like we're like talking together as adults and having the same memories.
Oh,
I
wow.
know, right? So I'm so
And
happy. Like I got to tell you this. I was just thinking, I am dying to tell Laura this.
I'm so glad. And, you know, this is actually much more than I expected because I thought we were going to kind of focus on him at age 9 and talk about that. But you've brought us all the way through to present day, literally present day.
Right.
And
Like
these
this
and
is
these shifts and changes are happening like that, right?
yep.
Wow. Wow. Bravo. Bravo. Good for you
I'm just so
for
grateful.
doing what you did for him, for hanging in there, for being a mama, that is some hard mofo stuff that you did.
Well, the nutty thing I want to tell you, so in case other parents are listening, is he has told us that almost everything that comes out of his mouth, he keeps saying, I keep saying stupid things. I don't mean what I say. And for me, when he would say something, I would respond to it and try to do
Mm.
it, giving him agency. But like last night, I'm sitting on the couch. He's spelling with daddy. I'm stroking his hair because I'm like, I can touch him now and putting my arm around him. And he goes, Mommy. Also, he calls me mommy speaking. He calls me mom. When he types like age appropriately. So he goes, Mommy, move. Mommy, go away. Mommy, go away. So normally, giving him agency, I would move my body because I want him to have bodily autonomy. But he's spelling out, no, I like it.
What?
So can you imagine you
Wow.
like something and your
Yeah.
mouth is saying, go away, get
Right.
away from me,
Yeah.
his whole life. And I'm like, oh, I think I'd be super mad too and violent
Mm.
and whatever. And he's been so gracious because he's never said, remember that time? It's all been, he said, I'm so glad you're my parents. I want to take care of you when I get old. It's just,
Mm.
it's this weird, he's coming out of his cocoon. We keep saying, no, Jason, go live your life. You don't have to take care of us. Take your love. And like, he wants to have a family. We're
Oh
just
my
kind of
god.
like,
I
now
have
freak.
tears in my
It's like,
eyes.
we have not stopped crying in like 2 weeks
Yeah.
because we wouldn't do it any differently, but this is just this unearned gift.
Mm.
It's a completely unearned gift that we can talk to him. And
Yeah.
now we know what his favorite color is. I can buy him presents. Stuff he
Mhm.
likes. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Um I actually don't want to switch topics, but we need to because as you saw, Scott popped in and gave us just a few minutes left. I do want to just kind of talk about your book because it's so beautiful. I'm not quite done with it, but I love reading it, and
Oh, thank
it's
you.
it's brought me right in. Talking to you first made it even more interesting to me because so I want you to just tell me a couple of the stories. Start off by telling me why you chose to do such immersive research for this book.
I wanted to do a book that was going to cover a lot of social issues from rural hospital closures, private equity, anti Asian racism, anti North Korean rhetoric, the Korean War, the murderous US occupation and partition of Korea that people don't seem to understand the US did, and that North Korea was not always existing as this evil empire, as
Mm.
George H.W. called it. I wanted to make sure, just like I do with my nonfiction writing, that everything I did was verifiable, including the scenes of biological weapons. And for instance, there is another author who's doing a book on biological weapons, and he has not only confirmed a bunch of the stuff, but he's like, "How did you know this?" And I said, "I just talked to people. I talked to the survivors."
Yeah.
So I feel like I need to, fiction also needs to be verifiable. If I'm going to immerse the reader in this. I don't want, for instance, I read this book by another. I won't give you any more clues about the author, but she had Buddha's birthday near Christmas because it's kind of like, oh, must be near Christmas. But I'm like, what? If you're a Buddhist, everyone knows it's in April and it's in the lunar calendar, and it's like you have to, there's just things you associate with it. So I thought,
Yes.
damn, man, can't
Mhm.
you just look it up? So just even things like that, but everything from the biological weapons and so forth is from survivors. And the other thing I thought was really funny is I'm a big fan of Bong Joon-ho. He did Parasite, but his earlier one, The Host, which is
Mhm.
also extremely metaphorical to to the U.S. occupation, because it's about the U.S. actually dumping formaldehyde in our sacred Han River.
Oh.
There is actually a scene where this stuff comes out of the sky and people are falling down and having convulsions, just as I imagined it in the book. But I realized, well, because I heard it from the survivors, but then also in Korea, this is just part of the cultural memory. It's not some secret. Here, it's like the CIA keeps saying we didn't use biological weapons, but in Korea, I was like, this is what we lived through.
Mm.
So do you see what I'm saying? Like, I
I
want to
do.
honor.
Yeah.
That's why I felt I had to go to freaking North Korea, put my feet on the ground. I have to honor all of that. I have to honor the medicine, delivering the babies, blah, blah, blah. I want to
Mhm.
honor all of that. So if you get immersed in it, you're not going to be like, oh, wait, actually, Buddha's birthday is in
Right.
the,
Right. Well,
is,
no, and that's
yeah.
so important. Like you said, with nonfiction, obviously you want everything to be accurate. But when I'm reading fiction, which is not quite as often as it used to be, but I still love a good, novel. Um, if there is something that's not correct, it will take me right out of it. I'll be out of the reading, and then I've lost the trust that I placed in this author, because then it's not correct. I really appreciate that you did all that. I didn't know anything. I know nothing about the American occupation in Korea, North or
And I
South.
know, I
Yeah.
know little too. And it seems amazing that the official language was English for the occupation, not Korean. But then if you go to Seoul, all the signs are in English. You know what I mean? Like there's these remnants of it. You're like, oh,
Right.
why are all these signs in English? Or why was the base at Osan? Osan means 5 mountains because it was the easiest for the Americans to say that town.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
okay, that's how we make our decisions. Where we're gonna put the sign, or where we're gonna
Yeah.
put, where we're gonna put the line. We don't care if the line goes to this guy's farm or like this family gets split up. Like these weird decisions. I mean, the epigraph is one bad decision can cause a lifetime of pain, and there were a lot of bad decisions that were made as if the Koreans weren't human beings with families.
Yeah. So take 2 minutes. Tell me what the book is about.
So the book is about an aging Korean American doctor. He's an OBGYN. His hospital, he's in his 70s. The hospital suddenly closes because private equity is buying up all these hospitals and closing them. He's like, what do I do with my life? And he's raised a wonderful son who went to Harvard Medical School. And like any modern person, wants to monetize his practice by joining a bro startup at the Mall of America that does like laser vagina tightening. So he's
Of
having his
course.
dad, yeah, because why not?
Right.
Why deliver babies? There's no money in that. Come on. And so the dad is stuck. He thinks he's doing vaccines, but he ends up doing laser pubic hair depilations for minimum wage. but he wants to
Oh,
help people. He has all these trainings. What's he going
yeah.
to do? And at the same time, these mysterious letters are coming from Korea. He grew up in North Korea. He did something awful as a child. And he thought, like many immigrants, I can just start over. And so these letters keep coming. Someone in Korea still remembers what he did. And at his age, like a lot of us, we just could live to the next day and the next day and just live our lives. Or he could actually face up to what he did. And that's
Mm.
kind of a lot of what the book is. Is he going to face up to what he did, or is he going to take the easy way out? Is he going to be an evening hero, which is what his, like, I'm Myung-Ok, his name is Myungman, which means evening hero in Korean. And is he going to live up
Ah.
to his name, or is he not? And
Mhm.
that's kind of the crux of the book. What gives your life meaning? What does aging mean? Can you actually fix things? Is it ever too late?
Yeah. Yeah. And the world that you paint for us in this book is so beautifully detailed. Like I was there, I from the very first paragraph, I was sucked into it.
Oh, I'm so
And
glad.
yeah, no, I really I do. I love it. I can't wait to finish it because I want to find out if he is the evening hero or not. So
Right?
I will be continuing to read. Um you're just I knew this was going to be a blast. You were such I don't even know how to describe you. You're like this really cool energy, um, but you're also really smart. But it's right, hon? But
Oh, yeah.
it's digestible by people who may not be as educated as you are about certain things. You're still breaking it down in a way that anyone who's listening can be brought along for the ride and understand
Oh,
what's happening. So thank you.
same could be
Thank you.
said of you.
Mm.
Well, thank you. I
No, this went
appreciate
so
that.
fast. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be talking for an hour. But I'm like, we barely got it all in.
I know. It's amazing how fast it goes. But before we say goodbye, tell us where people can find you.
I'm at Marie Myung-Ok Lee on Twitter and, the usual, um, Instagram. And I'm actually newly on Twitter. I'm sorry, on TikTok.
Oh, on
My
TikTok.
Yes, my Buddhist handle is Daily Writing Makes Book. And I
Ah,
talk about all sorts of random things.
I love that. I love that. And so it's Marie Marie, and then new word capital Myung
Yes.
hyphen OK.
Oh, it's all one word. So it's Marie,
Yeah.
Mungoklee,
Okay.
all
Right.
smushed together.
All smushed together. Yeah. So you can look for her there on basically everywhere. And now TikTok, give your TikTok handle again.
It's at daily writings, and they're underscores, daily underscore writing underscore makes underscore book. Daily
Excellent.
writing makes
And
book.
isn't that the truth? Daily writing does make book.
Yeah. That's what we believe. You just show up. You got to
Yep.
keep showing up, and
That's
you'll
right.
become enlightened one day. Or
Ah.
just, or maybe your kid will start talking.
Wait, and when is Buddha's birthday?
Well, it's on the lunar calendar. So it's
Right.
it's April-ish.
April-ish. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, thank you. Thank you so much. All of that, all your handles and everything, they'll be in the show notes of this
Love
episode.
it.
So if you didn't catch all that while we were talking, just go to the show notes and click and you will find her. Thank you again so much. Really appreciate this conversation. I think a lot of people will be helped by it and
I
feel
hope
less
so.
alone. Yeah.
Thank you for having me on so
Yeah.
much. Yay. Hi, I'm Marie Myung-Ok Lee, and I am the only one in the room who treated her autistic son with cannabis.